What is going on, Cultiv8 family? I hope you've all had an awesome week wherever it is that you're listening to this from. Today, I have my first guest since I came back from Thailand, and it is the first in a number of guest episodes that are going to follow this. Everyone that's coming on is awesome, and I'm excited to finally bring you some guests this year. So today we have Shona Denovan. She is a confidence coach who helps people get out of their own way. And I have absolutely loved the stuff she's been putting out recently. When I first met her, she was a pre and postnatal coach. And since then, she's actually pivoted in putting her full force into being basically a life coach that helps people with their confidence, that helps people with their businesses. And yeah, it's awesome. Her energy is awesome. And we got chatting quite recently because we have both had a late ADHD diagnosis in later life. We've had a similar experience, and we are only both now realizing how ADHD has affected our lives over our childhood, over our careers, our health, our businesses. So we really get into the thick of it today, and we chat a lot about impulsiveness, decision making, as well as our experiences growing up not knowing that we had ADHD. It was a cool episode. It was a really fun conversation to have. And just before we hop into that, a little reminder, my workout subscription app Superhuman has still got a 7-day free trial going for those of you that want to give it a go. It has beginner plans for all of my trans mass family that either want to work out in the gym or with dumbbells only. And I have an intermediate version of that coming really, really soon, which I'm super excited about. So that will be perfect for anyone that's got a bit of movement experience already, or for any of my people that are currently on the beginner plan but are looking to move to something a little bit more intermediate when they're ready to, when that confidence is up. So head to fuzzcultureclub.com/superhuman to sign up, and I'll see you in the community group if you do sign up. It is a wonderful place to be, and it's worth me mentioning, after the 7-day trial, it's 15 quid a month. So it's an absolute steal for anyone that doesn't have the means right now to have a coach, but they do want some decent programming that's going to give them a bit of structure, a bit of accountability, and be able to take the guesswork out of showing up and not knowing what workouts to do. So yeah, give it a go. Anyways, this is the wonderful Shona Denovan on the Cultiv8 podcast. Let's get into it. Hey Shona, thank you so much for being here today. You're like the first guest I've had on in a while because I impulsively went to Thailand for a month, but I'm back and now I have a guest, and I'm super excited. We've never actually met. I just watched you do a talk and then followed you on Instagram, and I think you followed me back. I think that's how we know each other.
Yeah. I have always been just like quite a nosy person, quite curious, and I love what you do helping trans non-binary people. That is incredible, and I love it. And it's just so refreshing for me to see what you're all about. So that's why I followed. Yeah. I was like, yeah, I'm all for that. And I also love the impulsivity. Like, what made you go to Thailand for a month?
Do you want the honest answer?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, basically just tried to move house. It looked possible. Everything was happening. And then it all fell through. And I just did a fuck it. And I just said to my girlfriend, do you mind if I go to Thailand? Is it okay if you look after the dog? And she was like, yeah, go for it. And so I just went. I'm very good at doing fuck it decisions. And I don't know if it's the concept of like, I used to be a touring musician, so I always have itchy feet and I don't tour a lot now. And I'm just very used to being away all the time. But like, obviously having the privilege of being like remote working, it was like, I can leave to go somewhere for a month and it not affect my business. And I can still show up in the same way. And I think I'd been like umming and ahhing about it for the last 6 months. And I think I just needed something to push me to book it. So the thing that I was hoping to happen, not happening, helped me do the fuck it decision.
I love it. And I think I totally agree with you. I think some of the biggest things that I've done in my life have been off the back of fuck it decisions, have been like really things that I haven't really thought through. I've just had this real urge to be like, this is what I want to do right now. And I'm not going to look back. And they're the most fun things, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Speaking of like, this is all going to be very relevant to people listening soon. But speaking of fuck it decisions, in the last 24 hours, I've booked a 10K, a half marathon and a marathon for the next year. So I'm in my fuck it era.
Yes, actually, so am I. I'm in my, like, I want to do things that really scare me,
Yeah.
and the things that, like, I could talk myself out of. So I've also just booked a solo trip. I'm going to Santorini for 7 days by myself, and
Right.
I have a toddler, so that is like unheard of.
Wow, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, imagine like so many of my friends are like, oh my God, I couldn't leave my child for 7 days. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I am.
I love
I'm not going to say on the podcast, but I've done something that everyone is going to be shooketh at. And then finally, I would love to try stand-up comedy, because that to me seems like the most terrifying thing that anyone can do. And then I imagine, like, once you've done that, you could literally be like, well, do you know what? I've done stand-up comedy. Everything else is easier than that. Come on, surely.
this is so weird. This is the second conversation I've had with someone today about forcing themselves to try stand-up comedy.
Seriously?
And it's not me. I was just talking to another friend, and they were like, I've just booked myself in to do 5 minutes of stand-up comedy. Like, is it a midlife crisis? And I was just like, I don't know, but I love it, and I'll come.
I love it, and I want to come too. And I actually think that 5 minutes would be harder than like an hour.
Yeah, 'cause you can't ease into it.
No, you can't ease into it. You can't like really settle in and tell a story. You have to be funny for 5 minutes. So yeah, good on that person. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, when are you doing yours? Good on you. Or have you not decided yet?
I've not decided yet. I realized that this is something I need to do, because I do a lot of yoga. I go to a class 3 times a week, and during Shavasana, I was writing stand up. I was like writing material in my head during Shavasana. And actually, I think that if I ever did stand up, I would talk about. So I'm also a yoga teacher, and I did my yoga teacher training in India for a month in 2019. And I think all of my material would come from that month, because it was just absolutely nuts.
I would pay good money for like fitness comedy, because like that's a market, right? That's a niche.
I think so. Do you know Andy Hamilton?
Yes.
He actually, he's now a stand-up, and I've been to see him once, and he does fitness comedy. A lot of his material is about fitness. He's quite unusual, because he's like this totally jacked guy. He's not your typical comedian, but I was really inspired by that. I thought, go on yourself, Andy.
I think we need more of that. I mean, if we think about all the like fitness, like meme pages and like silly reel pages that so many of us follow, like definitely a niche, isn't it? So you're a yoga instructor. When I met you were a pre and postnatal coach. What number of things do you do now?
Right. So I have 2 businesses. I was a pre and postnatal coach. And then, just like we've been talking, over the space of a weekend, I just burnt it to the ground.
I love that.
I made a post saying, I am no longer a pre and postnatal coach. And then I moved into like confidence and mindset. To be honest, like that's really what I was helping people with before. But I was talking a lot about pelvic floor and a lot about pregnancy. But now, confidence and mindset, I want to keep moving into this being authentic, living your authentic life, being unapologetically yourself, like consultancy rather than coaching, a bit of life coaching type vibes. So that's one business. And yes, currently what I'm offering with that is a confidence course. It's just a one-off purchase. You can jump into that, and it's called Get the Fuck Out Your Way. And the idea is that it helps you get the fuck out of your way and do all these like crazy things that me and Lucinda have just been talking about. And then I've got another business, which is Unapologetically Shona. And that is a life first business coach for coaches in the health and fitness industry. This will really resonate with you because you're in a band and you do lots of other things as well. There's this real sort of hustle culture, grind culture within the fitness industry. Like work 7 days, put out content every day or twice, 3 times a day, like work. Like you should be up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. and all this stuff. And that worked for me until I became a parent. And then I was like, this ain't working for me anymore. And I didn't get into this self-employed life to like work all the hours of the day. I got into this for the flexibility and freedom and the ability to do things like you. That's what I'm really pushing against, is this like hustle culture. So that's where this business coaching was born, and it's doing so well. And I'm so busy with it, which is why I've done away with the one-to-one coaching. So yeah, that's what I do.
Amazing. And I think since you've like pivoted into that area, and I've started seeing you talking about all the confidence stuff, like I don't remember your content before then, to be fair. I do remember all of the chats about confidence, and I definitely think the stories that you tell have like resonated with me. And then when you randomly shot me a DM about the fact that you were like late diagnosed with ADHD, and then it seemed like, right, cool, let's have a conversation. We've got similar stories in a sense that like we're both going through like ADHD diagnosis in later life. So like I'm 33, you are 36, was it? Do you mind me saying that? I've said it now, but I can cut it. When did you suspect you had ADHD? Did you ever have any thoughts that you might have had it growing up or anything?
I had a few thoughts when I was at school. It wasn't something that girls were diagnosed with, and it wasn't something that was ever entertained in my family. When it came up was when my son started to show signs of neurodiversity. And for him, he's only 2.5. You can't get autism diagnosis until you're over 3. But for him, he was like stimming a lot. And me and his dad never thought anything about his stimming. We just thought that's what he does. Like he makes a lot of noise and he shakes when he gets really excited. His whole body like moves backwards and forwards, and that's cool. That's fine. And he started also walking on his tiptoes, which is another sign. Another thing is he loves like numbers, puzzles, colors. He's very methodical, actually very not like me at all. I am a chaotic person. He's like very likes logic. So then when we went down the process of like getting him support, because like as soon as we thought that this might be a possibility, we were like, right, let's make sure that he gets as much support as he possibly needs. Imagine us being raised like that. Imagine. So then it was the health visitor that said, do you know that it can be hereditary? And she looked at me a little bit too long. I was like, bitch, please, excuse me. And then I had a conversation with my mum, and I was talking about like the stimming, and she said, you did that right up until high school, Shona. And I was like, what? And what had happened is I had stemmed all the way through primary school into high school, and then my teacher had complained to my mum about this stimming because it was putting everyone off in the class. And so I got told off, and I just stopped. And that to me, like there's so much that I think about, and I'm like, bloody hell, that was me undiagnosed ADHD, or that was me masking so heavily. Around the same time, I listened to Fern Brady's book. You know Fern Brady, the Scottish comedian? Yeah, she is wonderful. She's got a book called Strong Female Character, and it talks all about her autism diagnosis and the lack of diagnosis through her like childhood, adolescence. And so much of that resonated with me, is just this feeling of being not quite right, of being like annoying, being too much, being like wrong. I'm the youngest of 4 girls, and they are all very academic, very good at studying, very high achieving people. And I just didn't feel quite the same. Like I tried so hard. I really struggled to apply myself. And I had like a super strict, my mom was super strict growing up, and she would lock me in a room to study for my standard grades and my hires, and like not let me out until I'd been doing that for 2 to 3 hours, which now in hindsight, and I did it, I would sit and I would study and I would force my brain to do what it needed to do. And now in hindsight, I'm like, if only I had just had a little bit of like a support, and because it's not like I needed anything hugely life-changing. And I imagine like with my son, it won't be something that will be like, it won't be a big deal now because so many young people, like the support we are getting as a family is next level. And also like just the general acceptance of him is like so lovely to see.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I know that when I was stimming in like age 12, 13 in class, like the teacher was angry at me, was like, that's not okay. You can't do that. You're putting people off their work. Whereas like now it'd be, that's just him. Like that's what he does. So yeah, just a general feeling growing up, and also like a real lack of self-compassion because I just felt like there was something not right about me. Like, why wasn't I more like other people? Why wasn't I able to do the things that other people could do? And then when I finally got the ADHD diagnosis, it's not changed anything really in the way that I live my life, because you've kind of managed to get yourself to this, which is amazing. And if you are someone with a late diagnosis, give yourself a fucking huge pat on the back. But all it does really is give me such acceptance of myself and like a real pride in like what I went through and how I managed to get myself here. And then also just like you look around yourself in life and you think how many people are walking around without a diagnosis, and it makes you more empathetic for other people as well and more accepting of everyone's just general differences.
Massively. The amount of strength you must have had to have growing up, being basically told you were wrong. I relate to that a lot in a sense that like, you had no compassion for yourself because you just felt you were wrong. You weren't able to live the same life as other people. I definitely felt that at school as well. And I definitely had no idea, to be fair, myself until like the last couple of years at all. But again, like being an only child and stuff like that, I guess I almost had no barometer of like what was normal in a sense. But it's interesting you say like when that diagnosis came, it didn't necessarily change how you lived your life. It's just almost like validated that everything you thought was a thing. And have you sort of chosen now to pursue any treatment for it, or are you just cracking on?
So I think like just a non-negotiable for me is I've got a really amazing therapist, and she's been the one who actually was like, I think you should get the diagnosis, because I'm not exactly proud of myself for this, and I'm really sorry to everyone. But then actually I wonder if maybe this will be like some people will resonate with this as well. But when she first said, do you think that you might have ADHD? I was like, not me, not a chance. Like, no, how dare you? I think I'd had this idea, and again, this is the ADHD speaking, that like it would be attention seeking. Like people would say, Shona, you're just saying that because you want to be different. You want to be like people to think you're special. Which is my undiagnosed ADHD, like this idea that I'm wrong, I'm not doing things right. So she really made me question my biases, and I'm still seeing her every fortnight. I don't see any need to like let go of her.
Yeah,
I just think that like having a therapist and actually when you're in a good place, having a therapist is even better. So I think I'll keep her, but also what I'm doing now is trying to speak to more people with ADHD like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing another podcast this week with another ADHD coach, because I don't even really know much about what it means for me. I'm still learning a lot. So no, I don't think I'm going to change much about like how I'm living my life, apart from like just living it more authentically and with more compassion for myself.
Yeah, hell yeah. And I think like a lot of people that I've spoken to on it, like some people will be like, I feel in my mind that I want to try this. I feel in my mind that I want to try that. But there never seems to need to be like a concrete need to go down the medication route, need to go down the therapy route. I mean, I definitely argue that if everyone has the means to have therapy, it's obviously like important. But I think in terms of like medication doesn't seem like it needs to be the be all and end all. I think, I have a few clients that are on it. I have a lot that have tried it and not got on with it. I have found some that have found it's been really beneficial, but the hyperfocus and the impulsiveness can actually bring a certain amount of like helpfulness to business and to like productivity can be quite handy. Digging into like fitness and movement, do you feel like that has served a good role in almost helping you manage those symptoms? And was it something you did when you were young?
I've always been a very like, classic CrossFitter. Like CrossFit, I could just talk about CrossFit all day. At one point in my life, I was like 7 days a week, 24/7, 365 days a year, like CrossFit. And it really does play into people who have that kind of obsessive part of their personality, because like you can do 6 classes plus weightlifting plus gymnastics plus accessories plus the open plus watching all the videos plus the podcast. You can be all in. So no, I wasn't actually someone who did any exercise at school. Like I wasn't sporty. My family aren't sporty. I was like on the forums. What forum was it? Something Awful. Did you ever go on that forum?
Something Awful. Is that what it's called?
Do you remember that forum?
I have no idea what that is.
Okay.
What is it?
It was like Reddit, but back in the day.
Okay.
And it wasn't as bad as 4chan. It was maybe more like, the MySpace community, but like on a forum. I don't know. I can't really even describe it. Google it, somethingawful.com.
I remember music forums, like on that MySpace era for sure.
Yeah. So I was in that forum, and like there was like a forum where they were all talking about lifting weights. So I got really into that because like I think again I'm someone who, as soon as I get interested in a topic, I need to learn a lot about it. I need to know about the best way to do something. I need to know about the most effective way. So yeah, I got really into learning all about like strength training and lifting weights and following all the experts and stuff like that. And then I met my partner, and he is a rugby player, and he was trying this CrossFit thing. But according to the forum, CrossFit was the worst thing you could possibly do. I was like, I'm not going to CrossFit. That's all kipping pull-ups, lol. Meanwhile, I couldn't do a pull-up. So then I went to a CrossFit gym, and that was like 2012 or 13. My first open was 2013.
Nice.
That was me. Absolutely hooked. And then we opened a CrossFit gym together. I became a CrossFit coach. I became a personal trainer. And yeah, that was how I got into it.
Do you think stemming towards that career path, like, do you think that, you having that space to train and having that CrossFit box, has that helped you kind of get out of a lot of the busy brain sides of ADHD that you have? Because I know that's definitely a factor for me, but I know it's not quite the same for everyone.
I think it really speaks to this like high achieving part of my brain. It's like I want to push myself to the max. I really find that my mental health suffers when I'm not doing high intake. Like basically, if I did just Pilates and yoga, which is what I did for a while, like there was something missing, and it was like that real intense sweaty feeling. So I feel like that is really important for my brain. When you're doing like like barbell cycling, to me I just love it so much. It just feels like I can close my eyes and I can do it, and I just don't even need to think about it. Like that is sort of like really meditative to me.
Yeah, I agree.
But also, when I did my ADHD diagnosis, and they go through all the questions like, do you find yourself interrupting people, or do you find yourself like struggling to listen to people? And the answer to those questions is absolutely not, because that is what Shona naturally would do. But from such a young age, it was drilled into me that if I wanted to succeed in life, I needed to do completely the opposite. I needed to listen to everything that people said. I needed to be so interested in them. And I don't know if you've ever found this, but how that then translated to me is that I would like bark questions at people. So a conversation with me would be really exhausting, because I would be like, hi, Lucinda, what have you done today? And where are you from? How old are you? Like, I would literally be, and I would be so like, you need to be interested in people, that it would be so totally overwhelming.
Like intense.
Yeah, like super intense, yeah. How I think that has translated, and why I always thought I can't have ADHD, is because I do find people really fascinating, and I love listening to them, and I love learning all about them. Almost to the point where, yeah, that that is what my superpower is. That's what I was telling myself, like, you love people. People and communication is what you are so super interested in. I think that's why I really enjoy being a coach and a personal trainer, because that taps into that for me. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, and we have to ask a lot of questions. Like a big part of our job is asking people questions to find out like how we can support, but how they can like get out of their own way to do stuff. So yeah, makes absolute sense. When I did that questionnaire and it was like, are you always waiting for your turn to speak, or do you struggle to not interject? That's definitely a tough one for me.
Yeah.
And even like the first few guest episodes of this podcast, like when I was editing them, you can see from like my audio channel and the way that I breathe that like I forever have to fight to actually listen to someone. So this podcast has been pretty helpful for me, like trying to learn to do that. And it's kind of contrasting because I'm also a big people watcher as well. And I can just be quiet and observe something. But in conversation, like my brain just feels like it goes 1,000 miles an hour and gets ahead of me. And then that can like ruin a perfectly good conversation at the best of times.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from this, like, you like constantly analyzing what the other person is saying and constructing your response so that you come across as a normal human being, as you come across as someone who is interested and engaged and not like too much or overwhelming. So yeah, I feel that too. It's like I'm listening. I'm wanting to write notes. I'm thinking, right, Lucinda said that, I'm going to respond to that part of it. It is exhausting, and I wonder, like, we'll never ever be able to do this, but what it would be like to be in a normal brain for a moment. Like, I think it would actually be quite boring, wouldn't it?
I sometimes do think, isn't this just how everyone is? Like, surely there's no like other way. The reason that we started chatting about this is because I did a 2-part podcast over the last 2 weeks about sleep. So a lot of people that are watching or listening have also listened to that. And we talked about like what good sleep hygiene looks like, but we also talked about why people with ADHD struggle to get to sleep. And you were someone that slid into my DMs and was like, well, actually, I don't struggle with sleep that much, but maybe yes, I do, but actually no. And the like a lot of the stats that I pulled from the podcast recently is that like 75% of people with ADHD struggle to get to sleep. I think it's something like 85% of them struggle to stay asleep. And you say it's kind of like the opposite for you, but then also not really.
I think that like it does take me a long time to fall asleep, and I need, like, this is such a bad habit, but I need to have something playing. One time I was at a hen do, and I don't like sharing rooms with other people. I don't like, because I'm a funny sleeper anyway, like I know that I'm going to be really annoying to sleep beside. So I was sharing with one of my best friends, and I went to bed first, and she came in, and I had my phone like right next to my face, and she was like, what is she listening to? And it was Gwyneth Paltrow's court case. You know how she was in court because like a guy skied into her.
No, I did not know that. I only know all of the bone broth stuff.
Well, yeah, a guy skied in, or she skied into a guy skied into her. The guy took her to court. She ended up winning because he was trying to sue her for like all these damages. But yeah, so I just found that really like calming and soothing to listen to. So yeah, it's things like that, like court cases or police interrogations. Probably a terrible thing to listen to, like before you go to sleep. I'm quite a light sleeper, so I'll wake up throughout the night, or like I wake up really annoyingly early sometimes as well. But you know, last night I slept for probably about 8 hours, so that was pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah. What's your sleep like?
Oh, it's terrible. It's like, it's always been terrible. I think I was probably misdiagnosed with depression as a teenager when it may have been ADHD. Because they instantly just told me I was depressed without like looking into anything else. And I was like medicated as a kid. Like from being, I think I was about 17 or 18 when they put me on antidepressants. But I've been complaining about my sleep from being about 12 to 13 onwards. Which is the age it usually starts to present in people with ADHD. And so it was all of the creative stuff that would help me. Like I would sit up like writing songs and like messing about. And if I get away with doing that now without feeling like an absolute monster in the morning and not being able to show up well for work, I probably would still do it. But obviously you can run on a lot less sleep when you're younger. And then as you get older, as you have more responsibility, as you have more stuff going on, it's not as easy anymore. But with you saying you have to have something on, I'm the same. I'm the same annoying sleeper. Like, I mostly every night I fall asleep to Grey's Anatomy, like, cause it's like my like security blanket, like comfort show. And I think with a lot of people, we need to find the thing that's not going to stimulate us too much to the point where, like last night, for example, me and my partner were watching Physical 100 and we decided to watch the next episode. We absolutely shouldn't have because it was too stimulating and it was too intense and was then falling asleep, but then was too stimulated to actually go to sleep when we turned it off. Whereas when you have a sort of comfort blanket thing, something familiar, and obviously that kind of goes against a lot of sleep hygiene protocols that say like no screens. But, you know, if you've got an eye mask on and you've got a TV show playing, you're not necessarily looking at your screen. So I really do think even if something feels non-conventional, like you listening to court cases, like I think you've just got to go with what works for you. And like, I've definitely had it where I like put a podcast on and, you know, if it's like a nutrition or fitness-based podcast, it will be too much and I'll get really, really into it. And then I'll want to start writing notes or like business ideas. And I'm like, no, that's not it. But for me, for some reason, Grey's Anatomy works. Medical dramas.
Yeah, for a while I was listening to the US Office and that was working. But then there was a part where like Michael Scott is screaming. Like you've seen it because it's like, it's a bit of a meme. And he's going, wow.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, like woken up by it. But yeah, like court cases are great because you get the occasional like shuffling of papers, very muted voices. Like they are perfect. And they really work. And I don't look at it. I just like lie back and my phone's right here. And occasionally I do worry about like, you know, having your phone like that close to your brain for whatever. I'm like, that's really not that good for me, but oh well.
Do you put headphones in?
No, which is why I'm so annoying because like my poor partner's sleeping next to me and I've got like my phone playing loud.
Yeah, I have to have my headphones in. It's like a rule.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's totally fair enough.
Yeah, it's funny though, when I go on tour, if I have to like share a bed with someone, I'm like, I'm just propping my like iPad up and putting my headphones in and trying not to be really annoying in the travel lodge. Talk to me about business. Now, I know that you've only recently been diagnosed with ADHD, but there is a study that like an article spoke about recently in Forbes. Now, like this makes me sound like I read Forbes. I absolutely don't. I heard about this study from another coach and then I went and looked into it and it was basically like a UK study found a genetic link between a dopamine receptor gene variation associated with ADHD and a tendency to be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense because a lot of the self-employed people that I know also have ADHD. And basically the report says that people with ADHD are just 3 times more likely to own their own business. And I think what we were talking about at the beginning, that makes so much sense. I've quit every stable job I've ever had to go do something more fun, more risky for less money, always. And I've never cared, ever. And like, I've always just been like, well, if I end up like working back behind a bar, I'll just do that. That's fine. I can do that. Whereas I've definitely found people being like, oh, I've got this really big dream, but I definitely can't ever quit my job because it's really stable. Have you felt like you've taken loads of risks to be like freelance and run businesses more like impulsively and less considered and you've just sort of like jumped in?
Yeah, my entire life. And I saw that stat as well. And I was talking about it with my partner because me and my partner have been self-employed since I was 22 when I quit my last employed job. And we were like, why do you think that is? And I think it's like, it's the creativity combined with the fact that it's really fucking difficult to work for someone else. Oh my God. See, when I think about like some of my clients tell me about terrible managers or like these awful colleagues that they have to deal with. And the thought of my life choices being influenced by someone who is incompetent or someone who doesn't have my best interests or someone who, just doesn't like the look of my face that day, that makes me like want to vom. I think there's a combination of that as well. But yeah, I studied theatre at uni. My 3 older sisters are super academic. I've got a head teacher. My oldest sister's head teacher. Then there's a GP, then a dentist, right? And so I was like, no, I want to be an actress. And so I did theatre studies at uni and then came out and then just didn't have a job. I was basically like underemployed. And I was like, doing a lot of PR work, a lot of promo work, a lot of like sales, random sales stuff, random acting jobs, theatre and education. It's never ever figured to me to get a proper job, even though a proper job. I think that like, if you can harness that superpower, I know it's maybe quite condescending to call it a superpower. I don't know how you feel about that. But if you can harness that creativity, that drive to like want to build something yourself, like how much fun that is, then why the fuck not? Like, this is why we've been put on this planet to have as much fun as possible, in my opinion. And it is not fun working for someone else. It's not fun, like living every day, feeling like this is such a Groundhog Day. That's not fun. Like that's, to me, is misery. So why not? Why not?
Yeah, the thing about calling it a superpower, I don't feel either way about it, to be honest, because I appreciate for some people, parts of it feel like a superpower. And for some people, parts of it feel like a barrier and like really debilitating. And I think I'm just sort of in the middle because I know I wouldn't have been a touring musician that's toured the world if I hadn't have made loads of silly, impulsive, risky decisions. Yeah. And, like those decisions all came from privilege because I made choices to like not have anywhere to live for an amount of time. And also the privilege of the fact that like, I finished school and it's easy for me to get a bar job or a coffee job. In a sense, I definitely think that almost like a lot of neurodiverse people, we are very good at just making our world work for us. And for a lot of us, that just means not working for someone else. I've been self-employed for 6 years now. I've come close so many times to having to go back and get a bar job or a coffee job. And one of my clients yesterday was like, I need to ask you a non-coaching question. How did you go freelance? Because I know that you have ADHD, and how did you not just jump into it really impulsively and like, throw your good job away? And I was just like, this isn't the answer that you want, but that's exactly what I did every time. Like, it's not. And I wonder if sometimes that impulsivity does help. And I kind of always thought that I might fail at loads of things, and I probably have, but there definitely is always something in the back of my mind that's like, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just like that I just don't care enough about stability. And I don't know if that's an ADHD thing. I have no idea. But I definitely feel like you build your own world to make it easier for yourself.
Yeah, I love how you've just articulated that. And I really resonate with that. There's just not a fear of like failure, because we know as coaches that failure is actually a great thing. Failure is fine. It's okay to fail. And actually, how much fun and excitement is there in the fail? And how many funny stories are we going to get from the fail? Because as I've said, like I would love to try stand-up comedy. All the failures that I've had in my life would probably make some really great material.
I bet.
And it just makes for like a more rich, exciting life, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. No matter how much I've considered making an impulsive decision when it comes to like drastically changing my life, like moving cities, leaving jobs, starting careers, ending careers, it always has actually come from like a gut place of just doing it, just like ripping the Band-Aid off. I don't know how much of that ties into it really, but it's definitely a pattern I see with a lot of coaches I know with ADHD that have just like walked out of huge careers to go and pursue something else, for sure. All right, last thing I want to talk to you about that's not really going to be related to ADHD, but definitely something a lot of the people that listen to this podcast could do with having a bit more support in, which is confidence, because you have built, is it like a course for confidence?
It's called Get the Fuck Out of Your Way. It is in 2 parts. So there's 7 modules in total. The first 4 modules are for everyone. And then the next 3 modules are for people who want to start a business. So the first 4 modules are imposter syndrome, big dick energy. How do you feel about that phrase? Is that phrase allowed? The reason that I like it, because I read the definition of it. And this article said that someone with big dick energy is someone who is like quietly confident in themselves. They're not arrogant, and their confidence actually lifts other people up, and it has a sort of magnetism where your confidence makes other people feel safe and confident as well. And I was like, I love that.
I've never heard it like that. That makes it sound way better.
Absolutely, yes. So I feel like I should preface that with that. But that module's all about like assertiveness and boundaries, and how to actually have boundaries, because like boundaries are something that everyone talks about at the moment. And I actually listened to your first podcast, and I think you talked about how you struggle with people pleasing. So that's all within that module. And then we've also got a module on self-compassion and being your own biggest fan. And then a module on procrastination. And these are all things that I have struggled with. And what I really like, and I think you probably are the same, is like when you have a task to do, or like if you're having something that you're struggling with, I actually like having a step-by-step guide to actually addressing that. So with procrastination, there's actual modules, like ways that you can break down your procrastination. And when it comes to assertiveness, I've actually written scripts for people to actually practice their assertiveness, because like it's all very well and good like being confident, but then how do you deal with people who are quite manipulative, who are expert communicators, who are really good at getting you to do what they want? So how do you actually work with those people?
Do you feel like you're always confident as a result of doing all this stuff?
I definitely suffer from like I have like a really loud inner critic. I sometimes can question myself. Sometimes I get imposter syndrome, not very often though. But when I am Shona, the business, I'll always turn up with confidence.
Yeah.
I'll never let any of that inner stuff stop me from turning up, because that to me is like holding me back from having a successful business. If I listen to that imposter syndrome, then I won't turn up. If I listen to that self-doubt, I won't turn up. I just have to turn up regardless. What about you? Do you suffer from lack of confidence?
Yeah, massively. But I think I've also reached the point where the cost of letting it disrupt my life or like stall things that I want to do, like that cost is too high for me not to do those things anymore. You know, a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are people that struggle with confidence to live authentically because of oppression and discrimination, potentially family, friends, relationships. Thinking about those people, although you might have not directly been in those shoes, what would you say to someone that's struggling to live authentically for fear of how they're going to be perceived? Because that's not necessarily something that just my niche struggles with. That's something that everybody struggles with. Fear of being perceived is something that comes up time and time again. How would you navigate that for someone who just doesn't know where to start, but they feel like it's holding them back and they're just completely at a loss?
I think for those people, they need to start surrounding themselves with people who are living the life that they would love to live. And that's why it's so amazing that you have created the community that you have, because look at you, Lucinda, like you are someone who is living authentically as themselves, who is not following the same path as everyone else. They're doing things that make you happy, and you are leading the way for other people to do that too. If you only listen to people who have your best interests at heart, you'll never do anything. You'll literally never do anything. If you are surrounded by small picture thinkers, which so many people are, and especially people who you work with, like their parents aren't agreeing with their lifestyle, friends or larger network aren't agreeing with their lifestyle, then that's okay. But we just need to learn how to filter out that noise and actually listen to some bigger picture thinkers, some people with a much more open mind, some people who are living the life that you want to live.
That's definitely part of how I got here. When there's less representation, I just interrupted you there. I did the thing.
That's okay.
ADHD.
Did you find that was just really affirming to see like other people living the life that you wanted to live?
It was hard because there was less. And I was sat in therapy being like, I just want to find a non-binary person that's had an eating disorder, but that wants to like, you know, be an athlete and be a CrossFitter and like work on their food relationship. I felt like I invented a character and I was like, I want to see this. And then my therapist did that thing where it was like, well, maybe you have to be this. And I was like, yeah, I know. But like, I think for the most part, when I think about where I came from, like music industry wise, when I saw lots of people in the queer DIY music scene making a living off of touring squats in Europe and America, they became possibility people for me. And, you know, when people sometimes have a bit of insecurity about things they may have or haven't done, I think at the point where I started putting myself first and maybe trying things that other people hadn't or weren't conventional, like leaving well-established jobs and people telling me I was mental. I think realizing that people are always going to have a problem with you doing something that isn't what people deem as like safe or normal. And the people pleasing feeds into that as well, because it's really easy to move through the world and people please and be safe with the choices that you make for your life. But then, is that what you want? Like, so it was never what I wanted, for sure.
That must have been so hard to do what you've done without that representation. And so like, I really, really admire like the bravery that would have taken to do that and to manifest this, like what you've created is just incredible. So,
I mean, I think it's the same for anyone though, that kind of doesn't feel like they fit or feels like they're wrong, just to like figure out what they want their world to look like. And like for a lot of us, that might mean spinning multiple plates because that's how we like show up best and function best. And what I see in coaching in the fitness industry is so many of us have like multiple like pots and like spin multiple plates, and that's totally normal. Yet when I tell people I have a dual career, they're like, how do you do that? And it's like, it just kind of works for me and that's cool. And I can't remember what I was reading the other day, but you know, when people say, oh, I couldn't do that, the response should just be, well, don't. Hell yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you? I'll put all your links in the notes. When's your stand-up comedy page coming?
That's the truth. Oh my God. Do you know what? Like, I'm gonna message a stand-up comedian like in the next month and be like, right, what do I do? What?
I hope to see you pop up on like TikTok with like a really funny skit in like the next 2 months.
Oh my God, TikTok totally blows my mind. That's like the old lady in me is like, what is this? I don't understand it.
That's where all my people are. I spend a lot of time on TikTok. Yes, people, that was Shona Denovan. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I'll see you next week with my next guest. Have a sick weekend. If you get a spare second, please like, follow, and review the podcast. It honestly helps me so much. And if you're one of my new lovely people that's been watching on YouTube, please subscribe because I have a new project coming soon and that is going to be a lot of fun. Sending loads of love your way as always. Take it easy, Cultiv8 family. That is me out.